What should be a family celebration has become a real ring when the mother-in-law decided to humiliate her daughter-in-law in front of all the guests. She thought she could crush the young woman's self-esteem impunity, but underestimated a crucial detail. Her daughter-in-law was not the type that was trampling. When the offensive words echoed through the hall, she did not hesitate. In a firm voice and an ironic smile, he replied, "If I'm as immoral as it says, then let's share with everyone here how you won your child as exemplary. After all, the tree doesn't fall away from the root, right?" The scene in the kitchen of Eleonora Vladimirovna's house was a living portrait of a silent war. While Leah served the soup with trembling hands, her mother-in-law's eyes squad as a relentless judge. "Once again too salty, and this amount of carrots." "Maxim doesn't like it," Eleonora said, as if it were the maximum authority in culinary preferences. The husband, a 34-year-old man with his belly already being present, was limited to a distracted grunt, his fingers sliding down the phone screen. He had long adopted the strategy of neutrality, better not to get between two women in conflict. "He never complained," Leah murmured, the knots of the white fingers of so tight under the table. "Of course not," said the mother-in-law with a condescending smile. "I created him for 34 years. I know every detail of what he likes or not. I don't need a newcomer to teach me." 5 years of marriage, and Leah still felt an intruder, forced to prove daily that she deserved to be with that man who her mother-in-law treated as a trophy. The little Arthur knocked down the glass of juice, and before Leah could react, Eleonora was already there, wiping the mess with an air of superiority. "Poor, Mom is not paying attention," he said, while his eyes were banging toward the daughter-in-law. Leah swallowed hard. He remembered the first time he stepped on that apartment, when Eleonora received her with a homemade cabbage cake and a warm smile. "What a charming girl," he had said at the time. But as soon as the ring was placed on the finger, everything changed. First came the advice: how to pass the shirts, which detergent we wear, the ideal temperature to heat the meatballs. Then the advice became criticism, and criticism of a daily defects rosary. Leah took a long time, but understood. For her mother-in-law, she was not the wife of her beloved son, but a usurper who had stolen her boy. "I will change clothes and take the Arthur for a walk," Leah announced, drying her hands on the plate cloth. "With this wind?" Eleonora raised his eyebrows. "It's doing a degree, no wind," Leah countered. "Just until the playground and we come back." The mother-in-law turned to her son, as if she sought an ally. "Maxim, he just recovered from a cold. Why risk it?" The husband, finally taking his eyes off the screen, looked at both of them tired. "Maybe she's right. Better staying home." Leah closed her eyes for a moment. Always the same story, easier to give in than to confront, easier than demanding respect. "Okay," he agreed, his voice disappearing in his throat. Eleonora smiled, victorious, and called her grandson. "Come, my son. Grandma will put a drawing while the mom rests." When he got pregnant, Leah wondered that her grandson would be a link between them. It was mistaken. The battle has only intensified. Now Eleonora did not just fight for control over her son, but also for the creation of the grandson. "Why did you buy these diapers?" he asked, examining the package with disdain. "Full of chemicals. I saw a report about it. I should have taken these ecological. The pediatrician recommended these. The other's allergy on Arthur," explained Leah. "Doctors nowadays only think of money," the mother-in-law disseminated. "I know what is best for my grandson." Eleonora appeared without warning, he relate. The baby with the right soap, rearranged the room furniture to improve energy, altered the bottle schedules because the child was starving. And every time Leah tried to protest, Maxim sighed and repeated the same speech. "Come around. She just wants to help. She has more experience." At night, when Arthur was already sleeping and Eleonora finally retired to the next apartment, Leah sat in front of her husband and stared at him. "We need to talk." Maxim lifted the tablet's eyes with a heavy sigh. "Again about my mother?" "Yes, Maxim. Again about your mother. I can't take it anymore. Every day is like walking on eggs. She criticizes everything. My food, my clothes, my way of speaking, my way of raising our son. This is not careful, it is control. It's humiliation. Why do you never defend me? He pushed the tablet away and rubbed his forehead. Leah, you're exaggerating. She only worries. Ignore. Ignore. Leah's voice failed. 5 years ago I ignore. And you know what I won? The feeling that I'm a stranger in my own family. That your mother has more rights over you and Arthur than me. What do you want me to do? Force her to come? It's my mother, Leah. I do not ask to prohibit. I ask you to set boundaries. Let it explain that it cannot interfere with our decisions, cannot belittle me all the time, cannot undermine my authority in front of Arthur. Maxim got up and walked from side to side. You're being very sensitive. She has always been like that, a little dominant, but have good intentions. Good intentions for you, not to me, Leah murmured. And it's not a little dominant. It's toxic. It's manipulative. And if you don't see that, then it's part of the problem. Now our accusations? He replied, annoyed. Just can handle some more, okay? She's no longer, there's no one but us. Is that so hard? Leah looked at him, feeling the words stuck in her throat. How to explain that every acid comment, every disdaining look, was every veiled criticism like a knife that was digging its place inside it, leaving invisible scars? Arthur's birthday is coming, he said, changing the subject. 3 years. I want to have a little party, only us and some friends with children. Good idea, agreed Maxim, relieved to get out of the theme. My mother will love it. She already talked about making a cake. Leah clenched her fists, feeling the weight of another lost battle. Of course Eleonora Vladimirovna had already planned. The guests, the menu, every tiny detail Irene not even consulted. Well, she said, feeling something inside her crack like glass under pressure. May it be your way. That night, Leah spent hours awake, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, rolling in memory the woman who once was, independent, safe from herself, a marketing professional with a promising future. How had you become that pale shadow, hostage to the whims of a mother-in-law who ruled her house like a fiefdom? And Maxim. Maxim, who during dating seemed so strong, so protective, had revealed only another obedient son, unable to lift his voice in defense of his own family. Beside her, her husband breathed deeply, asleep. In the next room, Arthur muttered children's dreams, the only genuine light ray in her life. For him, she smiled. For him, I swallowed the pride. For him, he bowed. But how long? What lesson was giving the son, allowing them to treat her like a carpet to be trampled? Something needs to change, he thought, turning aside with a heavy sigh. Or I will just cease to exist. She did not know that fate has already weaved the wires of an opportunity. A chance to turn the game, which would arrive earlier than I imagined on your little's birthday. The phone rang too early. Leah, with the first cup of still hot coffee in her hands, frowned to see the number on the screen. Lidochka, is it already awake? Eleonora Vladimirovna's voice sounded irritates. Very excited for those hours. I decided to come soon to help with the preparations. I'm leaving home. We agreed at 12 noon. Leah tried to keep her calm, squeezing her cell phone tightly. Now it's just 8 a.m. Ah, but how are you going to handle everything so late? The mother-in-law laughed, as if the question were absurd. The guests arrive at 2 p.m., and we haven't even started yet. I have already prepared the pirozhki mass, just fry. Leah closed her eyes, counting up to 5 not to scream. We were not planning pirozhki. We ordered pizzas and sandwiches for the children. Pizzas? The tone of Eleonora Vladimirovna rose, unbelieving. Is this serious thing? Adults will be present, and you want to serve fast food? No, I bring everything, don't worry. The call ended before Leah could protest. She dropped the phone on the table with a moan. The day promised to be a fireproof. Maxim appeared in the kitchen, unkempt hair, wearing only the pajamas pants. Who called so soon? He yawned, extending his hand to the coffee maker. Your mother, Leah replied with a forced smile. It's already on your way. With pirozhki. At 8 a.m.? He raised his eyebrows. The party is at 14H. Exactly. Leah sighed, determined. It wasn't going to let it all escape from his hands again. Maxim grunted something incomprehensible as he served coffee. Well, more hands to help, faster it gets ready. Leah didn't argue. He had already understood that the day would not be hers. 40 minutes later, Eleonora Vladimirovna arrived loaded with bags, followed by a taxi driver who featured a box with a monumental cake. And the dinosaurs? Leah asked, watching the decoration of pastel cream running cars. Ah, just imagine. The mother-in-law opened her arms, theatrical. The confectionery confused the request. But look how these strollers were so much more beautiful. Arthur will love it, you will see. Leah pressed her lips. He knew very well that there was no confusion. It was only once again that his desires were ignored. Where is my birthday girl? Eleonora Vladimirovna took the coat, already heading for the room. Grandma brought a little gift. Arthur, the guests, Leah's parents. Then family friends with children. The apartment was filled with laughter, conversations, the noise of cutlery. Eleonora Vladimirovna, dressed in a flawless burgundy tailor, circulated among the groups, serving drinks, offering snacks, reaping praise for impeccable organization. Leah, invisible, fulfilled the role of servant. He carried trays, collecting dirty glasses, prevented the children from breaking something at the height of the excitement. No one seemed to notice his tiredness. Not even his own mother, who after an initial attempt of help, had surrendered to the charm of Eleonora Vladimirovna and now discussed the benefits of knitting. At 2 p.m., the apartment was a human anthill. 30 people, adults and children, barely fit in the space of the room. The air was heavy, the heat, suffocating. Arthur, initially euphoric with attention and those present, began to get angry. Too many emotions for a 3-year-old boy. Maybe we lie down to sleep a little? Leah Maxim suggested, noticing how his son rubbed his eyes, sleepy. In the middle of the party? He seemed surprised. Mom was upset the last time. She prepared games. Let the games damn, Leah exploded, unable to contain himself. Our son is exhausted. But it was late. Eleonora Vladimirovna was already clapping, gathering the children for one more joke. Arthur, dragged by the general enthusiasm, forgot for a moment his tiredness. That's when the bell rang. At the door was Natalia, her best friend, with a small package in her hands. Hi, friend, he smiled, hugging Leah tightly. What a crowd. I could hardly park. Natasha. Leah felt her eyes burning. For the first time that day, it breathed with relief. Anyway, a true ally had come, someone who, without a doubt, would be by his side. How good it is to see you, Leah whispered as her eyes filled with tears contained. You look exhausted, Natalia replied low, taking her coat with a quick gesture. Exhausted is little, Leah laughed without joy. Your mother-in-law is unbearable. Unbearable doesn't even start to describe, he said, lowering his voice further. This birthday looks more like a show of her than a party for Arthur. Eleonora Vladimirovna, realizing the new guest, approached a calculated smile, one who only knew her could distinguish from sincerity. Good afternoon. You must be Lidnia's friend, he said, extending his hand with an elegance that sounded like order. Enter, feel free. Lionher, why are you standing there? Offer something for Natalia to drink. Thank you, I serve myself, caught Leah, with a coldness that surprised herself. Natasha, come, I'll introduce you to the birthday girl. The next time was a relative calm, or at least in her illusion. Natalia, with the ability of those who had already dealt with dominant mothers, diverted Eleonora's attention with questions about homemade recipes and preserves, while Leah, for the first time that day, could breathe. He played with Arthur, who, visibly bored among strange children, was encouraged to see her free from the obligations imposed by her grandmother. But the truce would last shortly. At 4 in point, it's time for the cake. Eleonora Vladimirovna entered the room with her creamy creation, decorated with 3 candles, and deposited her on the table with the solemnity of a queen presenting her scepter. Now, all together, he commanded, raising his hands like a conductor. Congratulations to you. The guests sang the song, while Arthur, next to the cake, smiled embarrassed. Maximum filmed everything on my cell phone, encouraging the child with exaggerated gestures. Leah remained on the sidelines, striving to shape an expression other than pure bitterness. Put an order and blow the candles, my son. Eleanora leaned over his grandson, the morose voice as poisoned syrup. Arthur filled his lungs and blew with all the force that EU's 3 years allowed. A candle has erased. 2 remained lit. Once again, my angel. He encouraged his grandmother, before, with a quick gesture, erasing the remaining herself. The guests applauded. Arthur laughed, enchanted. And something inside was left for good. Even that. Until the simple gesture of blowing the candles on his son's first conscious birthday, Eleanora Vladimirovna had stolen. Leah, what was it? Come here, let's take pictures with the cake, called Maximum, as if nothing had happened. She obeyed automatically, stretching her lips in a smile that hurt. The mother-in-law, of course, was positioned beside her grandson, pushing her daughter-in-law to the edge of the photo, almost out of the frame. Now I'm going to cut the cake, Eleanora announced, taking the knife with the authority of those who always decide everything. The first piece, the most beautiful, with the toy cart, is for Artesinho. After the cake, the chaos resumed. Sugar hyperactive children ran around the house as miniature hurricanes. The adults were divided into groups, commenting on the last gossip. Arthur, invigorated by the extra dose of candy, displayed his new toys for his friends. Leah, escaping to the kitchen in search of more napkins, leaned against the fridge and closed her eyes. The head throbbed, the noise was unbearable, and the feeling that it was about to crumble grew every second. Hey, friend. Natalia's voice made her open her eyes. How about a little air? You have the face of those who are going to pass out any time. I can't be absent, Leah replied, exhausted. She will notice and arm a scandal. Damn, Natalia ruled out with a gesture. A minute of fresh air, and you are human again. Let's go to the balcony, there is silent, no one will bother. Leah hesitated. On the one hand, he desperately needed that interval. On the other hand, he knew Eleanora would not lose the chance to comment on his escape. Do you know something? He decided, straightening his shoulders. Come on. Worse than it is not. They slid to the porch, closing the door carefully. The October air was fresh, almost sharp, and Leah inspired deeply, feeling the tension gradually dissipate. God, as I am tired, he confessed, relying on the grid. This is not a birthday, it's a scam. Your mother-in-law is a dictator. Natalia shook her head. How do you take it? I would have exploded for years. 5 years of practice, Leah laughed bitter. At first, I tried to please her. I made her favorite foods, asked for advice, listened to stories of how the best was a perfect boy. She thought that if she was sweet enough, she would accept me. And I even understood that I would never accept it. Because for her I stole the sun. And the most, Leah sighed. He sees, yes. But he prefers not to get in. Mother is like that, you overdo it, she doesn't do it bad, always the same lame excuse. Natalia shook her head, incredulously. And those documents you found? Will you use it? Leah looked at her own hands, twisting them without realizing it. I don't know. It's like a nuclear bomb, it starts just thinking about detonating. But sometimes I think it's the only way to put it in place. They stayed there, savoring silence and fresh air, not noticing the time passing. 15 minutes became 20. Until the balcony door suddenly opened. Eleanora Vladimirovna was there, his face an ice mask. Here they are, he said, the icy voice like a blade. We were looking for you. Our guests worried, where's the birthday girl's mother? We only went out to take an air, Leah answered, forcing her calm. Literally a minute. A minute. The mother-in-law looked at the clock. It's been 20 that disappeared. The Artesinho asks, where is Mom? And Mom, of course, prefers her friend's company to her son. Eleanora Vladimirovna, Natalia intervened, her firm voice. Leah just needed to rest a little. She's up all day, running for everything. And who is not? Sharp. I didn't stop either early on. But I don't run away from the guests. No one ran away, Leah said, exhausted. We're already coming back. No need, Eleanora cut, dry. As always, I turned alone. He turned his back and left, leaving the door open. The cold air of the porch invaded the room. "What a witch! How dare you talk to you that way?" Leah didn't answer. Inside her, a wave of cold fury climbed, sweeping the last traces of fear and uncertainty. "Come on," he said, raising his chin. "Enough of hiding me. Mother!" Maxim's voice broke the silence, hoarse with unbelief. "What the hell are you saying?" But Lydia was already in motion. Slowly, as if she floated in a dream, she approached the table, served a cup of wine and took a long sip before turning to Eleonora. His voice was low, but each syllable cut the air like a blade. "It is fascinating to hear a woman's moral lessons who had a son of the lover and forced the official husband to raise him as his own." Eleonora's face splashed like chalk. The glass in his hand shook, spilling champagne over the silk dress. "What absurd are you inventing?" He himself, his lips twisted in a disdain. Lydia smiled. "Cold. Calculated. I'm talking, Eleonora Vladimirovna, that while you teach me to be an exemplary wife and a dedicated mother, your own history leaves much to be desired." The silence that was slaughtered over the room was so dense that it could hear the intersected breath of the children, now real estate, as if the storm were present. "Read." Maxim began, warning in the voice, but she raised her hand, cutting it without ceremony. "No, dear. The time has come for the truth." Her eyes didn't leave Eleonora. "Your mother humiliated me for years. He called me inadequate, negligently, implied that I was any." The word sounded like a slap. "But do you know what is worse than hypocrisy? It is hypocrisy without limits." She placed the chalice on the table with a dry crack and took a pack of folded papers from 4. "I found this in the old chest of the eviction closet." He unfolded them calmly, deliberately. Reading quite revealing. Especially the letters of a certain Georgie, who sent money regularly to keep the boy and begged to see the son. Maxim was paralyzed, the look jumping between his wife and mother, as if trying to reconcile two realities they should never meet. "Mom! What is she talking about?" Eleonora swallowed hard, his fingers shrouded in the skirt. "This is a grotesque scam." Lydia clearly lost judgment. "Farce." Lydia removed a picture of the pile. "So this is also an invention here?" He held the image for everyone to see, Eleonora, young, laughing with a man who was not Arkady in 1988. And another, in Just Kai, 1989, with a certain Georgie. Coincidentally, 9 months before the birth of Maxim. The guests contained their breath. Some looked into their eyes, ashamed to witness that collapse. Others, eager, absorbed each word as a sweet poison. "And the best," Lydia continued, pulling an official document, "it's here." He extended the papers to Maxim. Medical report, blood group of Arkady Petrovich Zarubin, his father. "And here, you. Let him process. Biologically, it is impossible for him to be his parent." Eleonora collapsed in his chair, his hands covering his face. The shoulders shook in muffled sobs. "Georgie was his real father," Lydia said, now just for Maxim, the smooth, almost kind voice. "He sent money for years, through intermediaries, to support you. Arkady died without knowing the truth." Maxim followed the documents with his eyes, the skin so pale that his bluish veins seemed about to burst. "Is it true, mother?" he asked, his voice broken like glass. Eleonora raised his wet face. "These were tough times, cynic. Arkady and I were in crisis. I was young, too. There." He closed his eyes. "Georgie appeared when I was fragile." "That is, it's true," Maxim repeated, each syllable a blow. "He loved him," Eleonora interrupted, desperate. "Arkady raised him as a son. Never let it show that you knew." "Because he knew," Lydia added, ruthless. "The documents prove, he took the paternity test. He chose to stay for you, Maxim. For you." The guests began to sneak into the exit, muttering, dragging confused children. In minutes there were only Lydia, Maxim, Eleonora, Natalia, petrified in the corner, and Lydia's parents, exchanging alarmed looks. "Why didn't you tell me?" Maxim looked at her mother as if she first saw her. "Years of lie." "I was afraid you hated me," Eleonora whispered, the words going into pieces. "And I hate it," he said, his voice a deaf growl. I don't understand how you could lie like that. He turned to Lydia. And you? How could you set this circus on our son's birthday? How do I? Lydia laughed, a dry sound, without joy. Your mother just called me a bitch in front of everyone. Humiliated me for years, controlled every step of mine, and you never said a word. His gaze burned. Today she crossed the line. I just returned the blow. Maxim ran a hand over his face, as if he could erase the scene. I need to take Artem. Where is he? I took it to the room when the fight started, said Lydia's mother, ahead. You're playing with the gifts. I think we better take him home today. Thanks, Irina Mikhailovna, Maxim nodded, grateful for the departure. It's the best. Eleonora, still sobbing, got up with effort. I go, he murmured. Sorry for the damage. On the threshold of the door, he turned to Lydia, the injected eyes of hatred and pain. You'll regret it, he said. I swear it will. When the door closed, the apartment plunged into such a heavy silence that it seemed solid. Natalia coughing, uncomfortable. I think. I'm going, he stammered, hugging his friend. Turn on if you need something. Lydia's parents took Artem half an hour later, leaving behind a devastated party room, halved crooked, torn wraps, withered balloons scattered like corpses of a celebration that should never have existed. Maxim and Lydia were alone in the middle of chaos. Why? He finally asked, looking at the void. Why today? In front of everyone? And when would it be the right time, Maxim? She retaliated, exhausted. Your mother never gave me a respite. He never treated me with a minimum of respect. Today, she surpassed all the boundaries. We could have talked in particular. We talked for 5 years, Lydia laughed, bitter. And nothing has changed. He shook his head, as if he tried to shake the mist. I need air, he announced, getting up. I'll stay at Denise's house. Of course, she agreed. You need time. When the door closed, Lydia sank on the couch and buried her face in her hands. The birthday had become a disaster. His marriage hung for a thread. And yet, in the background, relief. As if a weight of years had been torn from his back. Whatever comes ahead, he thought, watching the empty room, I'm not going to bend. The following days were a purgatory of silence. Maxim returned the next day, but brought with him an ice wall. He said the least, left early, came back late, slept on the living room couch with the excuse of not wanting to wake her up with his nightmares. Artem, back home. Always impeccable, now it seemed careless, as if the hands that once arranged her with so much care had lost their strength. The eyes, once so penetrating and full of authority, now shone with a shadow of uncertainty, or would it be afraid? Maxim hesitated for a moment before opening the door, as if that simple gesture demanded more courage than he imagined. Lydia, beside him, took a deep breath, his fingers intertwined with his. An almost imperceptible squeeze, but that spoke more than words. We are together in it. Inside the coffee, the newborn coffee aroma mingled with the smell of apple cake, creating an illusion of normality that contrasted with tension in the air. Eleonora Vladimirovna got up as they approached, and for a second, Lydia saw her not the relentless mother-in-law, but a fragile woman whose hands shake slightly while adjusting the bag on the table. Does she also feel the weight of everything that has been said? Of all that was done? They feel, Eleonora's voice came out low, almost a whisper, as if she feared that any higher tone could break the fragile balance of that moment. Maxim pulled the chair to Lydia before sitting, a small but meaningful gesture. He is choosing his side, thought Lydia, and something inside it warmed, despite the cold that still persisted between them. Thanks for coming, Eleonora began, her fingers playing with the spoon beside her untouched cup. I didn't know if you would come. We didn't know either, Maxim replied, bluntly, but without hostility. But it's time to end this cycle. Or at least try. Lydia watched every movement, every shadow that crossed her mother-in-law's face. Does she finally understand the damage she caused? The question burned in his throat, but she contained herself. It was not the time for accusations. It was time to hear her if Eleonora had something to say worthwhile. I was wrong, the words came out like a sigh, as if they had been arrested for decades behind a locked door. Not just with you, but with myself. I lived so long within this lie that I ended up believing it was necessary. That was better that way. Lydia crossed her arms, instinctively protecting herself. Better for whom? You destroyed your son's confidence, she said, without raising his voice, but with a firmness that left no space for empty excuses. And almost destroyed our marriage. These are not things that fix themselves with a sorry. I know. Eleonora looked down, and for the first time Lydia saw something that resembled shame. And I don't expect you to forgive me now. Or never. But I need you to know one thing. I loved your father, Maxim. More than anything. And when I found out I was pregnant with another man. She swallowed. I thought she would lose everything. Arkady, the family, the respect. So I chose to lie. And then, with each passing day, the lie grew, until I no longer knew how to get out of it. Maxim remained silent, the nodes of the tight white fingers. Lydia could see the battle in her eyes, the pain of a betrayed son, the love for a man who raised him as his own, and the anger at the woman who deprived him of the truth for so long. And Georgie? He asked finally, the name coming out like a cut. He knew. Eleonora nodded slowly. He knew. And in his cowardly, he tried to compensate. Money, gifts, but never dared to really get closer. Maybe because, deep down, I was afraid too. Fear of losing your family, your reputation. She laughed, a bitter sound. We're all the same, aren't we? We prefer to live in lies than to face the truth. And now? Lydia could not avoid. What do you want, Eleonora Vladimirovna? Let us be a happy family again, as if nothing had happened. No, the answer was immediate, almost desperate. I don't ask that. I just ask, a chance. To know my grandson without interfering. To see my son without judging his choices. And if one day, if you allow, trying to be better than I went. The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with the weight of years of resentment and hurts. Lydia looked at Maxim, waiting for him to make the decision. After all, it was your mother. Your pain. He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the table, as if the answer was written there. Let's take it easy, he said at last. No hurry. No promises. But, he raised the look, finding Lydia's, seeking approval. We can try. By Artem. Lydia nodded, not because she trusted Eleonora, but because she saw in Maxim something she hadn't seen for a long time, hope. And perhaps, just maybe that was the seed of something new. Something that had not erased the past, but could, with time, patience and hard work, build a different future. When they left the coffee, the afternoon sun painted the streets with golden tones, as if the world had not witnessed the battle that had just occurred at that table. Maxim held Lydia's hand harder, and she knew, without him having to say, that they were taking the first step. Not behind, not to lock the wounds, but forward. For something that, perhaps, could be called peace. The coffee door opened with a slight tilt, and there, sitting at the table by the window, was a woman whose once insurmountable pride now bowed under the weight of years of solitude. Her hair, once impeccably tied to severe bun, gave way to a simple ponytail warded by white strands. Hello, mother. Maxim leaned over and placed a quick kiss on his face, while her thin and trembling fingers lightly squeezed her son's arm, as if he feared he would fade. Good afternoon, Eleonora Vladimirovna, Lydia greeted with a contained nod, a firm but not cold voice. The mother-in-law's eyes, once imperative and safe, now rose with a painful slowness, as if each blink cost a superhuman effort. There was a shadow of something that was not just sadness, but an ancient pain, buried under layers of pride and denial. Thank you for coming, she murmured, and fragility in her voice made Lydia, for the first time, glimpse the woman behind the steel mask. I miss you a lot, from you, from Artemka. Especially of him. He also asks for you, Maxim answered, settling in front of her. The mother's fingers shuddered over the teacup still untouched. Asks why the grandma doesn't appear. A tense silence breaded. Eleonora Vladimirovna looked up, and in them shone a fear that Lydia never turned to her before, the fear of having lost something irreparable. What did you tell you? The question came out shaky, as if she already knew the answer, but had to hear her to confirm the worst. That the grandma is very busy, but loves him very much, Lydia intervened, crossing her hands on the table. His tone left no doubt. It was not an excuse, it was a border. We do not involve a child in adult conflicts. The mother-in-law nodded, grateful, but her eyes fell immediately, unable to support her daughter-in-law. The waiter brought tea and sweets, but the sweet aroma could not disguise the bitterness that still impregnated the air. Each of them moved distractively on the cutlery, as if the simple act of playing something concrete could postpone the inevitable. I wanted to apologize. Finally, Eleonora Vladimirovna broke the silence, her fingers intertwined so hard that joints whitening them. Both. For all. Maxim did not move. There was no anger at his face, just a calm expectation, as if he had already forgiven, but needed to hear the words to close the cycle. Why, exactly, mother? He asked, fixing her with a look that was not accusing but relentless in his clarity. For the lie about my origin? For the years of control? The times when my wife humiliated? She shuddered, as if he had broke him a physical blow. The lips trembled before he could form the words. For everything, he whispered. I shouldn't have hidden you. It was selfishness. And with Lydia, a quick, almost pleading look toward the daughter-in-law, I was unfair. Cruel, even. Why? Lydia's question cut the air, low but sharp. What did I do to deserve this? Eleonora Vladimirovna shook his head, as if the answer was too much weight to carry. Nothing. It wasn't you. It was me. Her voice broke, and for the first time, Lydia saw tears run down that face that had always seemed sculpted on granite. When Maxim brought you home, I saw how he looked at you. With a devouring, a delivery that he never had for me. And I suddenly understood that it was no longer the most important woman in his life. This is natural, mother. Maxim's voice was soft but firm. I grew up. I found the woman I love. I built my own family. I know, she nodded, wiping her eyes with a sudden gesture. Rationally, I understood. But after your father died, the voice failed again. You were all that I was left. My purpose. And then Lydia appeared, and you started to walk away. Instead of accepting, finding my place in your life, I fought. As if, proving that she was not good enough, I could bring you back. Lydia listened, astonished. In 5 years, that woman had never even given her a glimpse of vulnerability. And now, there she was, dismantling by piece, like a castle of cards that finally collapsed under the weight of her own lies. And then it was born, Eleonora Vladimirovna continued, the hoarse voice. And I transferred to him my need to be necessary. I thought I knew better than you what was good for him. That could be a better grandmother than her own mother. She closed her eyes, as if the shame were unbearable. It was wrong. A heavy silence settled. The confession hovered in the air, raw and painful. I got lost after Arkady died, he admitted finally. I forgot that I had my own life, my own interests. I clung to you like a lifeguard, and in the end I pushed them away. Maxim covered his mother's shaking hand with his, not in acquittal, but in recognition. We don't want you out of our lives, mother. But we need boundaries. Of respect. For the first time that afternoon, Eleonora Vladimirovna looked straight at Lydia, wet eyes, but without fleeing. Lydia, her voice was a thread of sound. I know I caused a lot of pain. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know, I recognize my mistakes. And if you allow me to see Artem. He swallowed, I swear to respect his decisions as his mother. Lydia studied that face marked by time and remorse. Was it sincere? Or just another strategy, another mask? Could a person change so deeply after decades of toxic patterns? We need time, he said finally. I don't oppose that you see your grandson. But in my conditions, without interference, without criticism, without trying to turn Artem or Maxim against me. I accept, said Eleonora Vladimirovna, fast, as if he feared the offer was withdrawn. Anything. And more, Lydia added, without giving a millimeter. Maxim and I are considering moving to another neighborhood. We need space. Of a chance to rebuild our family life without shadows of the past. The mother-in-law's face trembled, but she contained herself. I understand, he murmured. It's wise. When they said goodbye to the coffee door, Eleonora Vladimirovna hesitated, his nervous hands playing with his bag. Can I come next week? He asked insecure. Just to see Artemka. Maxim looked at Lydia, leaving the decision in her hands. It took a long time, weighing every word, every risk. Then he nodded. Wednesday, after 6. But no more than an hour. He needs to sleep early. Thank you. The gratitude in the mother-in-law's voice was genuine, almost desperate. I'll tell you the days. On the way home, Maxim intertwined his fingers to those of Lydia. Thanks, he whispered. For giving her a chance. It's not for her, Lydia replied, looking out the car window, where the city's lights started to flash. It's for us. By Artem. He deserves to have a grandmother, as long as this does not cost his peace. I will never fail with you again, Maxim promised. Squeezing your hand. I won't be silent when you need me. I know, she smiled lightly, as if an old burden was finally put on the floor. I trust you. To build something new, it is necessary to demolish the old one until its foundations. And although the way had been painful, she didn't regret anything. The truth, no matter how bitter, was always worth more than the best woven lie. Minutes later, Maxim and Artem returned home, the faces blocked by the race and fresh air of the night. Mom, I learned to walk, announced Artem, throwing himself in his arms, his eyes shining with pride. Dad said I'm the fastest cyclist in the world. Of course you are, laughed Lydia, squeezing him against you. The fastest and fastest. Maxim approached and wrapped them in a hug, his lips brushing her ear in an almost imperceptible whisper. I'm the happiest man in the world. Thank you for not giving up. For fighting for us. She nestled against him, feeling the rapid pace of her heart, as if each beat echoes the same gratitude. We all fought, he said softly. And we won. Later, after bedtime, they stayed in the kitchen, savoring the rare minutes of silence that the night offered them. You know, Maxim broke the silence, his fingers playing with the edge of his cup of tea. I sometimes think that day. On Artem's birthday 2 years ago. It hurt so much that I thought I wasn't going to survive. But today I understand, it was like surgery. Brutal, necessary. Without her, we would never have healed. Lydia nodded, reliving in memory the one who had been one of the hardest and, paradoxically, liberating of her life. I was afraid you would never forgive me, he confessed, his eyes fixed on his hands intertwined on the table. For choosing that way. I was afraid too, Maxim admitted, with a sad smile. You never forgive me for years of silence. For not being the shield you deserved. They were silent for a moment, each plunged into his own reflections, until he spoke again, this time with an almost imperceptible hesitation. My mother called today. He asked if he could take the Artem next weekend. Want to take you to the zoo. Lydia looked up, surprised. And what did you answer? That we would think about it, he said, studying his reaction. How do you feel about that? 2 years ago, the answer would have been a categorical no, sharp as a blade. But now, she took a deep breath, weighing every word. What a light, he decided finally. It will do the Artem well spend time with the grandmother. But that brings him back until 6 in the afternoon. Not even a minute. The relief on Maxim's face was visible. I'll tell her. I think it will be happy. Lydia smiled, although she knew that Eleonora Vladimirovna would never be her favorite person, would never take the place of mother she had so longed to have. But by Artem, by Maxim, for his own peace, he was willing to maintain a civilized truce. In 2 years, they had learned a lot. Telling the truth even when it burned like acid. To trace limits and respect those of others. Forgiving without forgetting, but releasing the weight of the past like a balloon that finally wins the sky. And above all, they had learned to be a real family, not perfect, with their cracks and storms, but solid, built on foundations of love and mutual respect. I love you, Maxim murmured, squeezing his hand on the table. I love you too, Lydia answered, feeling my heart overflows with a heat that was no longer afraid to name. Outside, the sunset burned in shades of gold and pink, painting the sky like a promise. Ahead, there would still be trials, joys, victories and losses. But now they knew that together they would surpass everything. Because the truth, as hard as it was would always be worth more than the sweetest lie. And the true love. Roe. This one was able to survive to the worst of the storms.